Hello and welcome to Airheads, a not-so-serious look at the serious business of royal rumours, gossip and gowns. I'm Tom.
And I'm Maeve.
And Maeve, I'm actually quite scared. We're recording on Halloween and I think someone's back from the dead.
It looks like Prince Andrew is trying to perform some dark magic to revive his zombie career as a senior royal.
Yeah, just over a week ago now, because we did take a break, a source told The Times, the Duke is spending time working out how he can serve his country and support the monarchy in the future, and what else he might want to do with his life. He's locked down at Royal Lodge thinking about his future service and public role. He has some clear thoughts.
Some.
I truly doubt that. He's very sensitive to the public mood. Again, don't believe that. And acutely conscious that the public are the most important stakeholder. He feels he has support from the family, very much so, including all his siblings and his parents.
Okay, a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, the fact that this was reported in the Times, I think it was the Sunday Times, was pretty crucial here, I think, because it wasn't in one of the tabloids. Whoever this source is, they went to the broadsheet, the paper of record, with this little quote. Also, interesting that he characterizes it as a business, with the family as an institution, a business, and we are the stakeholders. And I would just say he's absolutely not sensitive to the public mood, if these are his clear thoughts.
Yeah, showing, I guess, his crap business acumen that he has totally misread these stakeholders.
And he seems to have misread the support from his family as well.
Yeah.
The Telegraph had a story the following day which said, Buckingham Palace has made clear that while family members privately support Andrew, a return to any form of public role could only be considered if it is no longer overshadowed by his link to Epstein, which is just never going to happen.
Not happening at all.
A senior royal aide commended the Duke for the level of maturity he had displayed in dealing with the fallout thus far.
Oh, well done, Andrew. So mature, so good for his age, isn't he?
For that big age of 60. This is a wild way of talking about a man of this age. This is like something you would say about Prince George or even like Prince Louis.
Yeah.
Like to talk about a level of maturity. And the example they give here is that he accepted he could not feature in Princess Beatrice's official wedding photographs or attend the cenotaph on Remembrance Sunday.
Which probably none of them will be doing at this rate anyway. But yeah, like, you don't get commended for maturity when you're a grown-ass man.
The source said, the Duke is still a son, a sibling, a part of the family, and he has not been cast out. But when he stepped back from a public role for the foreseeable future last November, it was over controversies concerning his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, and they have not been resolved at all. In an ideal world, the family would love to see something change, but the hard reality is that there are a lot of hurdles to overcome first.
That's an understatement. Like, he is absolutely mired in this huge amount of mess.
And his timing could not be better. All of this was happening the same week that Ghislaine Maxwell's legal deposition was unsealed.
I mean, talk about reading the fucking room.
The Miami Herald had sued for this deposition to be released, and it reported that it was only released after days of wrangling over redactions. These fucking redactions, man.
Yeah.
The deposition is from Virginia Roberts Giuffre's 2016 civil case against Ghislaine Maxwell, in which she accused her of defamation, and which was settled in Virginia's favour. But, as you've probably seen by now, the names of a lot of men are redacted in these documents. Although, according to the Miami Herald journalist Julie K. Brown, 2 of the victims are named, including a 14-year-old victim. But there are a few passages in these documents that relate to Prince Andrew.
I think it's probably simplest and safest if we read from a piece that The Guardian wrote about it. So they said, Maxwell issued a public statement denying Giuffre's claims that she helped Epstein abuse her on the 2nd of January 2015. In her deposition, Maxwell confirmed that the following day she sent an email stating, "Have some info. Call me when you have a moment. The recipient's name is redacted, but the subject matter, Giuffre, and timing strongly suggest that it went to Prince Andrew.
I think we know it went to Prince Andrew because of that. Was it the Dispatches documentary or the BBC documentary? One of those anyway that we watched last year.
Did a real deep dive into the timings and everything.
Well, we saw this email.
Yeah.
When Andrew sent the email at like 3 a.m. or whatever, and it was very yikes.
The piece goes on. What did you discuss on that call? Giuffre's lawyer had asked Maxwell. I don't have any specific knowledge of that call, Maxwell replied. Were you discussing with, redacted, the subject of Virginia Roberts Giuffre during these calls? Virginia's attorney points to an email in this exchange, noting, he says, let me know when we can talk. Got some specific questions to ask you about Virginia Roberts. Yeah,
this was the early dawn email from Andrew in that documentary.
Ghislaine Maxwell was unclear when exactly the conversation took place, but said they did speak at some point. Asked what they talked about, Maxwell said, just what a liar she is.
God.
She also said, I don't think he told me why she was a liar. The substance of everything that she said was a lie with regard to him. So given, like, this civil case, the defamation that Virginia was bringing against Ghislaine Maxwell was about them calling her a liar. And according to the Telegraph, she was called a liar on no fewer than 28 occasions. And also they used terms like exaggerator, fantasist, and truly terrible person. These people called her a truly terrible person.
Wild. Slate also identified 3 other mentions of Andrew in these documents. So one was regarding that fucking infamous spitting image puppet that we've talked about before, when they say, do you recollect asking Virginia Roberts to sit on Andrew's lap with the caricature of Andrew? And then there's another bit later where Ghislaine Maxwell says that she's known Andrew for a very long time, but that she never introduced him to Jeffrey Epstein or Virginia Roberts Giuffre, and that Andrew never told her that he'd had sex with Roberts Giuffre. There's also another exchange when she's asked, so did Prince Andrew tell you that he did not have sex with Virginia Roberts? And Ghislaine says, he doesn't even know who Virginia Roberts is. And she's asked, did he tell you that he didn't have sex with her? And she says, it would be difficult to have sex with someone you don't know. Well, there's a photo. That would suggest otherwise.
Yeah, and I mean, she does all that stuff in the deposition, the stuff that we've heard from Andrew since about, like, that's a fake photo and all of that kind of bullshit. So this is really just bringing up all the shit that Andrew has been covered in for the last year and a half. Anyway, The Telegraph had the author Nigel Cawthorne provide an analysis of what these documents might actually mean for the royals. He focuses on the fact that we still don't know whether Andrew has actually spoken to the FBI, and I thought he gave a really good summary of the situation kind of as it stands now, because it's been going on for so long that sometimes I just totally lose track of what's happened and what hasn't happened. He says, back in June, federal prosecutors confirmed that the Department of Justice had made a formal request under the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty for access to the prince in the matter of Epstein. Prince Andrew had 21 days to submit himself to being interviewed by the American authorities. Otherwise, Scotland Yard was supposed to ask him questions provided by the Department of Justice. If he refused to cooperate, he could be subpoenaed by a British court and answer the questions there.
He goes on, throughout, Prince Andrew has maintained that he is willing to cooperate. He is only wanted for questioning about what he may know about the Epstein case. There are no charges against him. Indeed, the sexual offences in the indictment against Miss Maxwell occurred before Prince Andrew knew Epstein, and there is no mention of him in relation to those charges. Even so, under the treaty, if he went to the US to speak to the authorities, he could not be arrested. The MLAT offers further reassurance by saying he would be given safe conduct. It is not currently known whether the Prince has spoken to Scotland Yard or the FBI, or whether Home Secretary Priti Patel has acted on the MLAT request. If she hasn't, this is a possible breach of an international treaty. If she has, or Prince Andrew has submitted himself voluntarily, now might be the time to say so.
It's incredible. I mean, it is not beyond the realms of possibility that they have broken another international treaty. We know that our current government don't seem to mind doing that. But it was wild to me to be reminded of the fact that, like, the stuff that they want to talk to Andrew about, it seems like he's super safe from anything with regard to it. Like, he can't be arrested. He didn't even know Epstein at the time. All they're looking for is background information, and he's just digging in his heels, and it just makes him look so guilty.
Yeah, it's such a bad look, considering he claims he has nothing to hide.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some more humiliating news for Andrew is that he may be sacked as the head of Britain's most famous yacht club.
I'm sure we don't even need to name that yacht club because it's obviously so famous you'll have heard of it before, but it is, of course, the Royal Thames Yacht Club. And members met in secret to discuss stripping him of his Commodore title. Leaked minutes from the meeting show that the club has had repeated discussions with Buckingham Palace about dumping him.
Yeah, this was reported in the Daily Mail, and they spoke to a source who said, there is a strong feeling that Andrew was not a suitable Commodore. It is a family-orientated club, and Andrew was not in keeping with that. Sure isn't. There is a strong desire to replace him with Kate. She's an accomplished sailor and would be a huge asset as the club's first female Commodore. The palace is digging its heels in because they want to avoid further embarrassment for Andrew. If the RTYC removes him, other similar organisations will follow. It is complicated by the club's royal status. The role of Commodore is effectively in the gift of the Queen.
So awkward that she would have to take the gift away from Andrew and give it to somebody else, but so telling that they care way more about the embarrassment of a member of the royal family than, like, the status of these patronages or the organisations that they're associated with.
Digging their heels in, that's really telling.
Yeah.
I also wonder how many organisations are, like, desperate to swap out whoever random royal they have is for Kate. Like, everyone wants Kate.
Yeah, absolutely. But while Andrew is clearly longing for the limelight, other royals are managing to get round unnoticed.
On Tuesday, we found out that Kate had taken Prince George and Princess Charlotte to the Imperial War Museum in London.
So funny.
The Mail had a quote from Sebastian Shakespeare's Museum Mole.
I love that.
He always loves using the word mole. It's so old school. I love it. Anyway, the Museum Mole says, Kate took George and Charlotte there very much as members of the public.
And very much.
They added that George looked on in awe at the military hardware.
That's a way of saying guns and bombs, right?
And the Mail report says, Buckingham Palace declines to comment on the visit, but I'm assured that 7-year-old George seemed impressively knowledgeable about World War II.
I mean, it really does seem that they've been taking the lockdown as an opportunity to school him on military history with all these books and these trips to a war museum. Like, I know it seems like pretty weird to be taking kids to like this war museum. It's probably not that weird if you've ever been a posh little boy in England like I was. I feel like adults are constantly talking about World War II and telling you how important it is to know everything about it and being like, oh, you must love guns and things. Like, it does kind of make sense to me in that regard, but it is weird to me that this was the museum they chose to sneak out in the middle of a pandemic to go see.
Yeah, like, we went to the Imperial War Museum a couple of years ago when they had that Ai Weiwei exhibition on.
Yeah. And
there were a surprising number of kids there. And
tons, yeah.
They were weirdly interested.
Yeah.
Like, outside of that exhibition, everything else was so boring to me.
Yeah.
And ugly. It's not a nice...
Yeah, that's history. You know, you've got to look at the ugly truth of this world.
But it was the lighting was very dark and didn't love the layout.
Much like being in the trenches, maybe. But yeah, I do think you basically go there to worship Churchill. It's like a temple to him.
How many times have you been there?
I had a birthday party there.
What birthday?
I can't remember, but I had a Bug's Life cake.
Whoa.
So that's the kind of era we're talking about.
Maybe you were 7, like George.
I think I was a bit older than 7, but I don't think I was, like, indoctrinated that young. But yeah, like I say, it's like a big deal for, I suppose, especially posh kids. I don't know.
I don't think you've ever impressed me with your knowledge about World War II, though.
I'm sorry. I'll try harder.
The kids have also allegedly been baking with Kate and Will. The Royal British Legion tweeted a photo of a plate of iced buns decorated with poppies and wrote, "The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge and their family have shown their support for our #poppy appeal this year by baking these delicious poppy cakes which were delivered to our care home in Norfolk." Let's talk about this picture, Tom.
Yeah, I do not see a lot of evidence of the Cambridge kids' trademark abstract curiosity and creativity.
Will had said over the summer that the kids had been attacking the kitchen.
Another military term.
And that they caused an explosion of flour.
It's perfect.
And I do feel like, you know, an adult could certainly create these. They have a professional look to them, but I would imagine whoever is doing their cooking in Anmar Hall got the little poppy decorations sorted for them, the adornments.
Yeah.
And then Kate just had to deal with the piping bag. Or Will, I suppose, but I really can't see him doing a good job with this.
Well, I mean, after creating such an impressive bake, they got a well-earned break. They went to the Scilly Isles for a quiet, down-to-earth, half-term staycation. This was last week.
Those are quotes from the Daily Mail, by the way, not Tom's own view.
No, not at all. So the Sun had this headline that was incredibly blunt. It said, Prince William and Kate take kids on modest British holiday, unlike Harry and Meghan's California life of luxury.
This just blew my mind, because how can you say that with a straight face? Like, what do they think the Cambridge's daily life looks like? They live in a fucking palace. How is that not a life of luxury?
It's, well, I mean, sometimes they have to travel between a palace and a stately home, so... They also, Sun had a quote from a holiday maker who had seen them, who said, "We hardly noticed at first, as they seemed a normal family on holiday, intent on keeping themselves to themselves. The place where they were staying was quite modest and certainly not hugely luxurious. We couldn't help thinking what the weather might be like in California, but it's much better to be holidaying here in Britain."
Wretched. Ugh. How much did they pay this holiday maker?
I know, like, Jesus Christ. Also, Harry and Meghan aren't holidaying in California. They literally live there.
But it really seems to me like Kate and Will live a life of extreme luxury.
Yeah.
And that this person saying it was certainly not hugely luxurious. Their everyday life is hugely luxurious.
Yeah, exactly.
And
they're slumming it for a week.
This is them taking a week off to play act at being middle class, to get pieces like this that will appeal to middle class dummies who will suck this up and think, oh, they're so down to earth.
Yeah.
Get a grip. The fucking reason they were in the Scilly Isles is because Prince Charles fucking owns places out there. It's part of the duchy. Like, it's just absurd.
It's all very silly.
Yes, but I was very mad about this, Tom, as silly as it was. This kind of thing is what keeps the monarchy running, because people will just lap it up, unquestioning, and literally see the like shitty little picture of a modest cottage on the Sun story and say, wow, Kate and Will really are so down to earth. Bullshit.
Yeah, total bullshit. But let's for a second take our own holiday to California and check in with the Sussexes.
Meghan Markle scored a victory in her legal proceedings this week against Associated Newspapers, the publisher of the Mail on Sunday. She got to have a private hearing in which she requested that the trial be delayed from January to autumn 2021. The judge, Mr. Justice Warby, said that the basis for the application is a confidential ground, the merits of which were expanded on in the course of a private hearing. He also said he agreed to the exceptional behind-closed-doors hearing to avoid damaging the confidential nature of the information, and that Associated Newspapers had not objected to a delay after seeing Meghan's argument and evidence supporting the request.
So this is a 9-month delay, and that has obviously got a lot of people thinking what confidential secret reason could be behind a 9-month delay to proceedings.
But we're not interested in that kind of speculation.
No, we're not. I did think it was interesting that the article noted that Thomas Markle has not been informed of the confidential reason.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, because it wouldn't be fucking confidential for very long.
Meghan's legal team has also applied for the whole case to be decided by a judge rather than a full trial, which is a legal proceeding known as a summary judgment over here. And this is apparently largely to prevent Meghan having to go up against her dad in court. But the judge said he wasn't in a position to make a decision on this summary judgment application at the time and has set a date of January 12th to hear the application. In any case, this means Harry and Meghan won't be coming back to the UK in January as planned.
Yeah.
And those rumours we heard about Harry coming back in the next few weeks have been squashed as well. The Sussex spokesperson said, "It is unlikely the Duke and Duchess will be travelling before the end of the year because the focus had been the trial in January. As that is no longer happening, there are no plans to travel at the moment, but any travel plans will be kept under review. They haven't finalised any plans for what they're doing over the festive period, but COVID restrictions will need to be taken into account."
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. We're just about to go into another full lockdown. I can't see Harry flying into that.
But in other news, we got a look at the landing page for archwell.com.
Yeah, so this went live just before we took a little break, and there's nothing really new content-wise about Archwell. We have the name and a dictionary-style breakdown of the meanings, which we previously heard in all the descriptions of what Archwell was going to be from the Sussexes.
I do want to know what dictionary they got these from.
Well, you'll note I said dictionary-style definition.
Because we've got arch, Greek word meaning a source of action, and well, a plentiful source or supply, a place we go to dig deep. This is the Markle dictionary.
Yeah, definitely.
The Tigtionary.
But we did get a logo of sorts, I suppose. I mean, obviously the final logo could be different, I suppose, if there's just a holding page. But what we have is a very minimal sans serif affair. All the attention is drawn to this W, which looks like two V's kind of overlapped. I think there might be a little bit too much space around the W, but that's just me being a pedantic designer. What did you think of it?
Oh, I thought it was so boring.
Yeah.
I think we had talked before about how we were imagining that they would go for quite a different colour from that Sussex Royal Navy blue.
Yeah.
And I think we had said we wanted to be like a green or something, that we thought they might do like, you know, green, the colour of new life.
Yeah.
Sort of similar to the green cape dress Meghan wore at Westminster Abbey for their final engagement. But when I saw this beige, I wasn't surprised, but I was disappointed. Meghan's devotion, her commitment to beige is ceaseless. And ceaselessly disappointing to me.
Yeah, it does make the whole thing look a bit like a kind of lifestyle brand, like an expensive, aspirational lifestyle brand. And I'm interested to see how that is going to translate into the work that they want to do with it. Because I can see this as like the header, and then you scroll down and you get like 8 different kinds of incense, you know, and a sage stick or whatever. But people have pointed out that this beige is quite on trend at the moment, and that it's like an earth colour which fits with all the talk about being grounded and digging deep, the place we go to dig deep. I don't know, it's not like super earthy to me, it's a bit too pale, but I did think it would be interesting if their plan is to work with a lot of other charities and other existing organisations, that they would keep their own Archwell branding very minimal and understated in terms of like co-branding to keep the attention on their partners.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm just saying, in my opinion, it's way too dull.
Yeah, I agree. It's like totally dull, and I would love to see something a bit more exciting. Talking of exciting, let's get on to quote of the week.
We've got 2 this week. So, first one, because we just had to have another killer line from Virginia Roberts-Giuffre. She always does it. She was speaking to ABC News about the redactions in the unsealed Ghislaine Maxwell deposition. And she said, regarding Prince Andrew, "I feel very angry. I don't understand why we are protecting someone who hides behind mummy's skirt and says, 'I didn't do it.' His name should have been out there in the deposition."
So good. Hiding behind mummy's skirts.
It's fantastic imagery, and she's totally right.
Absolutely.
I also want to talk about Prince Harry's interview with Patrick Hutchinson for British GQ. You might remember Patrick Hutchinson from the very famous photo that was taken of him at one of the Black Lives Matter protests in London this summer, which shows Patrick carrying a counter-protester from one of the far-right All Lives Matter protests that was going on the same day. He's holding this guy over his shoulder, basically rescuing him from being crushed in a crowd. And it was all over the front pages back in June and made a huge splash.
Yeah. So Harry is interviewing Patrick and he asks him a lot of questions. You can read through it on GQ if you're interested.
Or watch the video.
Yeah. He kind of covers things, including we were talking about how he says, like, oh, how did you manage to, see through the red mist that descends in these kind of situations, which
Some advice Harry could take himself.
Yeah. But Harry does get to talking about unconscious bias. It seems like his main kind of area that he keeps talking about with regard to this, which I guess makes sense. But he said,
and no one's blaming anybody. That's the way that I look at it. No one's pointing the fingers. But you can't really point the fingers, especially when it comes to unconscious bias. But once you realize or you feel a little bit uncomfortable, then the onus is on you to go out and educate yourself as much, because ignorance is no longer an excuse. And unconscious bias, from my understanding, having had the upbringing and the education that I had no idea that what it was. I had no idea it existed. And then, sad as it is to say, it took me many, many years to realize it, especially then living a day or a week in my wife's shoes.
These kind of quotes are, I feel like, really complicated about, because I know a lot of people really respond to this.
Yeah.
But I just hate how he's almost like, is proud the wrong word, in talking about how he learned all this at the expense of his wife.
Yeah.
That's just keeps coming up over and over again for him, that he's gotten an education through the campaign of abuse and harassment that was leveled at Meghan.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And for him to come out of it, like you say, with this kind of pride in him now being the woke prince or whatever, at what price? So back in June, when the photo was taken, The Sun ran it on its front page with the headline, "It's not black versus white, it's everyone versus racists," which is a quote from Patrick Hutchinson that Harry paraphrases in the interview that he does.
Yeah, and I just felt like a little bit uneasy with this whole interview, and at the time, the whole narrative around Patrick Hutchinson as this hero, and the way especially the right-wing media and white people really seized on him, and how they treated this story really didn't sit well with me. And I read a piece back at the time that I thought kind of was interesting in regards to Prince Harry's interview, by Jason Okundaye, writing in the London Review of Books. And he said about those words, "It's not black versus white, it's everyone versus racist," he called them a sentimental bromide intended to delegitimize and de-radicalize the current movements of Black Lives Matter activism. And he said that this image of Patrick Hutchinson had been received as an expression of heroic, cool and noble masculinity, about which he says, "I wonder where that leaves black people or other people of colour who have no interest in or capacity or opportunity for similar acts of heroism, who are not cool and good, but feel righteous hostility towards whiteness and are not interested in diplomacy. Interpersonal acts of sacrifice, forgiveness or kindness cannot be the panacea for racism. And black activists cannot be required to follow an established code of behavioural and moral conduct. The promotion of respectable blackness is a gift to white supremacy. It obscures the social relations that define white power by identifying racial aggression as the preserve of a non-respectable insurgent minority, apparently unrepresentative of a more gentle and tolerant majority of blacks. I would urge everyone who centres kindness and diplomacy to consider this carefully." And I really had that in my mind when I saw this interview that Harry was doing.
Yeah.
And I don't love it.
Yeah, I think that whole piece really perfectly explained to me my own unease with the situation, because this isn't about Patrick Hutchinson and whether or not what he did was good or bad, but it really does apply to how white people take that image and how they transform the conversation around what protests should be or what they should look like.
Yeah, and Jason Okodaye finishes his piece by saying that we should resist any narrative that tries to diffuse Black Lives Matter activism as non-threatening and essentially about equality rather than liberation and abolition.
Yeah.
And I really felt like that's what was happening in this GQ interview, both in the way it was being framed by the magazine and the way that Harry was talking about it. Because it felt like they were kind of patting themselves on the back for talking to this guy.
Yeah, definitely. I got that vibe from the kind of introduction and in some of Harry's like responses to Patrick, definitely.
And we've talked about this before in relation to all of the royals, that there is such a limit to what they can do with their work because they are so afraid of engaging directly with any political aspects of it or systemic aspects of the causes that they're supporting. And it means that all of their work is kind of neutered because they can only talk about things on the most surface level, like vague platitudes.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, you can say that Harry is doing the most out of his family, but that's, like you say, such a limited amount of engagement that they can do. And Harry seems to want to be doing a lot more, or seems to think he's capable of, you know, making real change and working. And he needs to, I think, be able to free himself from this like fear of offending the Queen, fear of getting too political, because otherwise, like you say, the work just, it can never mean that much.
I know, and that's what's so frustrating, because we had been excited when Harry and Meghan were leaving, and a lot of the narrative that was coming from their camp was that they wanted to be able to work in their own way and not to follow the very traditional royal protocol kind of way of working, and that would mean they could do things like get political and engage with the roots of these problems. But it seems like Harry is so preoccupied with not wanting to embarrass his family that he is holding himself back. Or it's also possible that, you know, he doesn't really know how to talk about these kind of things. And I know you had mentioned that it seemed like at certain points in the conversation where Patrick Hutchinson was raising those kind of systemic issues, that Harry didn't know how to respond to that and almost steered the conversation away from that to safer territory.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Patrick Hutchinson starts talking, like you say, about the class issues that affect people across racial boundaries, like within the UK. And I felt like Harry felt safer talking about like unconscious bias, which is his thing, which, you know, it's very important that people understand that. And there are a lot of people who refuse to recognize it. So it's good to keep talking about it, but it's still just words, and it's still words that we've heard before from Harry at this point.
I know, and I remember we had talked about when Harry and Meghan did their list of trailblazers for Black History Month with the Evening Standard. Before I had seen the list, I was thinking, oh, I'm sure they're going to have Marcus Rashford on the list. And when they didn't, I was kind of surprised. But the more I thought about it, I was like, well, because he is, you know, naming names and going straight to the source of the problem in calling out the Conservatives, that's a very obvious example of a political stance. And even though it seems like an issue that's so close to Meghan in particular's heart in terms of food poverty and things like that, that it just seems to me like they are not prepared to address things in that kind of way, or take that more tangible approach yet. Maybe after the 1-year review, they will be free to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
But at the moment, it seems like they're a little bit hamstrung and sanitized.
Yeah, and we've talked, like, both on the podcast and off the podcast about how much we liked initiatives like the Smart Set and the Together cookbook, in that they had real tangible effects on communities and people's lives. And so far, we've got a lot of talk and a lot of, you know, good conversations that are good to be out there in the world. And I understand that it's a very different world right now than it was when they were doing those initiatives. But I would love to see something with a more concrete result.
Yes, me too. Because I would also like to talk about Fit for a Queen.
Yeah.
And we got some new pictures of Kate, well, some high-res pics this week of Kate presenting hospital workers at St. Bartholomew's in the City of London with a Pride of Britain award alongside Will.
Yeah, it happened earlier in the month, but the photos were only released on Wednesday, I think. She wore a navy Smithson blazer that we had first seen on the Canada tour in 2011, and she's worn 9 times total in public, so she's really getting our money's worth. With it has wide leg trousers, which, you know, also is something
I think those
like.
are new, because I don't think we'd seen those before. So she made herself a little trouser suit.
Oh, she made the trousers herself. Oh,
to go with the jacket. My favourite part was the blouse, this electric blue silk blouse with a rainbow print on it. So that was like a nice little nod to the NHS. But I also liked that the blouse was from Lizou, which is a black-owned London label founded by Renee MacDonald. And I wondered if that was maybe Kate's nod to Black History Month.
Yeah, that would make sense. And maybe it was what prompted Clarence House to finally do their Black History Month post on the 30th of October.
And Kate also wore her mask for a little bit, her Amaya children's mask. That is too small for her face. But I have to say, as much as I loved this blouse, I really felt like she was upstaged by Kate Garraway in that gorgeous Stina Goya dress.
Yeah.
I also have.
But on to First in Line, and I'm very excited for it.
Well, Tom, who is first in line this week?
It's Camilla! She has been very busy over the last week and a bit. She has done so many things. She's been to Paddington Station to thank the rail staff for their work during the pandemic, which is, you know, a boring event, but she got to meet the COVID detection dogs. I love any kind of footage of Camilla with the dogs.
Me too. She also went to the Bank of England to hear about their plans to support people, and we got a great shot of her and Prince Charles poring over a sheet of uncut 20s.
Which is so funny. It looked like something out of like one of those kind of heist movies where they're like replacing the money with fake money and, you know, or Bad Girls. Is that what it's called?
Good Girls?
Good Girls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that. I love that show. She also went to Western Burt Arboretum to look at some trees.
Oh, and she wore some very elaborate boots there.
Yeah. She also wore some great boots when she hosted some sculptures of elephants in the garden at Highgrove.
They were the same boots, weren't they?
I think so, yeah. They're these sculptures of elephants that are going to be auctioned, and the funds are going to go to support innovative solutions to the growing conflict between humans and wildlife. So well done, Camilla.
And she presented a virtual Olivier Award with Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Our favourite royal adjacent theatrical lovey.
And she have a speech about the flexibility and resilience of the theatre people.
It's so funny that they got Camilla to do that and not Edward.
I know. Where has Edward been? We haven't seen him in a while.
Maybe Edward can't be in the same virtual room as Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Listen to our bonus episode about Prince Edward and Sophie Wessex for more on that little drama. Camilla has also gotten ever so slightly more popular.
And that's not just in this podcast, because obviously she couldn't get any more popular with me.
This is coming from the latest update to the YouGov Royal Favourability Tracker, which polled British people in January, March and October. And so this is coming from like over a few years. Camilla's rating has gone up. And at the moment, the positive rating is 44%, though she is still quite divisive, and her negative rating was 43%, so she has a net score of 1. The Queen is still the most popular royal, followed by Prince William, which surprises me. I can't believe he's more popular than Kate.
Yeah, I'm really surprised by that. I don't understand how he managed it. Harry and Meghan's popularity, you probably won't be surprised to hear, is way down in the UK. Harry has a similar net score to Camilla. 48% of adults have a positive impression of him and 47% have a negative.
Yeah, and I know we're talking about Camilla and First in Line here, but just the kind of big newsworthy bit from this poll is that Meghan's net score is minus 26.
Oof.
33% positive, 59% negative, which really is not surprising. I was a little bit surprised that her score was still quite low among young people, that she's got a score of 20. between people aged 18 to 24 and minus 66 among adults over 65, which is yikes.
I think if you're between the ages of 18 and 24 in the UK and you like the Queen more than you like Meghan Markle, someone needs to like really sit you down and give you a good talking to.
And her score is still not as low as Prince Andrew, which is minus 73. Why not more, honestly?
Yeah.
Who's got a positive rating of this guy?
Well, what about next week?
As Tom has mentioned already, we're going back into full lockdown here. So I would imagine there probably won't be any royal appearances in person for the next few weeks unless we get some more volunteering outings.
Yeah.
But they will probably do something for Remembrance Day.
Yeah.
So next Sunday was due to be the Remembrance Day service at the Cenotaph that we usually see.
You may remember the Cenotaph from the far-right extremists singing the Queen Happy Birthday during the protests in the summer.
Sing the national anthem, yes.
Yes, sorry, the national anthem for her birthday.
We will have to see what happens now, but I can imagine they'll probably do something boring, honestly, to mark this day.
Probably will be sitting around eating some Cambridge poppy buns.
I've got to say, I'm finding the royals boring at the moment.
I know what you mean, yeah.
I hope this wasn't a boring episode to listen to, but I just have lost a lot of interest in what they're doing. And I think, you know, it's been building up over time, but I am just totally snooze on all the work they're doing recently. Work, in inverted commas.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what I want them to be doing, but what they are doing isn't holding my attention, and like, thank God we have The Crown coming soon, which will like inject some kind of excitement into the whole thing.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking with another 4 weeks now in lockdown,
yeah,
and the potential for more Zoom events, we might need to take a little hiatus here because
I can't cover Will and Kate on another Zoom call. I can't do it.
Well, you never know. Kate might wear a hat or something, and then we'll have like 10 minutes sorted. Yeah, let us know how you guys are feeling. Like, are you still interested in what they're doing, or is this just Tom and I being bored and like distracted by other shinier things? Like, what do you make of royal work at the moment? Please let us know.
Yeah.
You can send us an email, airheadspod@gmail.com.
But until the next time we do an episode, we hope you take care.
And have a great week. Bye.
Bye.
Nude. White.
Beige.
If you had beige or nude, you are